baggies, you know, and I want the white space. I want the white space on the baggie, you know, so that I can label the baggies and I don't get confused. And, you know, I go to a Dollar General and all of the baggies that they had, they showed no white space on the baggie. And, and, and so like days later, I'm at Walmart and I'm standing there. And it's like, none of these baggies have the white thingy so that I can label them. And I'm standing there and I'm like, you know, Kelly's been giving me shit. You know, you got to do something with these cables because they're just laying around in my room. And I'm standing there and I think, well, fuck it. I'll just look in the baggie. I won't bother about labeling it, you know? And this was what Quasar thought was funny. So I buy the baggies, and then it turns out they did have the white field on the baggie. So I can actually look in the baggie and read my writing at both times.
So today's
My
today's
favorite
yeah.
my favorite part of that story is that the recording is going to go from Lawrence talking about book delivery to you talking about white baggies. We're like, what just happened?
It's a good
We need
segue.
like a sign in there, James,
Okay.
just like to see the.
I'm pretty sure we lost the first minute. So where are we again? I'm sorry, everybody.
That's all right.
Action.
I was asking Lawrence about when his book was released, and I had one follow-up question for that.
Yeah. So basically, it was released in June, and then as part of a blockchain conference here in Toronto, which was in August, I did a book signing there. So as part of the book signing, I actually did an interview with one of the media companies up here called Blockchain North, and that's where that video on YouTube is, where I kind of give it I talk about Cardano in the book, as well as I do also give an overview of my book on my own channel. So that's a bit of the history there on the book. And the book's called
Right.
Ultimate Cardano Smart Contracts, and it's on Amazon. So, okay, Steve, you had another question then?
I did. And you were able then to include some of the new functionality from Plutus V3 in the smart contracts?
So this is the reality that I started that book in September last year, like a year ago. So I completed it. It took about 6 months to write, and so the really Plutus V3 wasn't really around. It wasn't live.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of details. So you kind of have to cut, a line in the sand and say, okay, well, this is as much as I'm going to do. So no, it really just focuses on Plutus V2, which is fine. From what I was trying to educate and get people up to speed, it had enough information, and it was, 300-page book. As you guys all kind of know, as you teach in this area, there's tons of stuff to teach, right? So I found it was fine. I didn't need to get necessarily the latest,
Right.
but that's really why I've reached out to Gimbalabs, is because as part of these proposals, I do want to include some of the latest features. So that's why I want to think about what ed tech platforms we could use with workshops. And that's really where I was hoping to have a conversation on that, because that's
Right.
where I see as immediate need is that I want to create these workshops as part of my proposal and many other proposals out there, I'm sure. And what tool could we use to streamline and avoid redundant information, and ultimately have kind of the best in class information? Like, here's a workshop, and here's how you could use maybe Andamio to help facilitate that. I think you got a lot of brain power here. I think we could get it together. Sure, I could go ahead and do myself, but it kind of defeats the purpose when you got all this talent here, and avoid the duplication. So that's kind of really the motivation. The book is great because for me, I thought it was really useful to have a single resource as a developer. It's kind of a mode that I like to learn, so that's kind of why I did it. But absolutely, there's many different modalities that work, and obviously the online and classes and video tutorials, all those are great. And so I think it's great to have all these different options for people to learn Cardano and Cardano smart contracts. And mine was just one kind of piece in that puzzle, so to speak.
Sure. Sure. So, and we're really fortunate, because what I'd like to hear is how you and James met and that immediate conversation about this stuff. But I just wanted to point out that we have some educators here. Martin and Quasar are involved in doing education about the Gamechanger and everything that's possible with that platform. And we also have DGK Acid, also Travis, who's part of the work.course website team, and they have a lot of stuff on that in the coursework, the numbers of courses available to look, and I'm really excited to dive into that a little bit myself. We also just came in Mix Axum, who works on education and has like once he got done learning Plutus after his first couple of months, he started teaching. So, you know, like he's he's like really, really fascinating professor of coding in general. Anyway, I just want to point out we've got a group of educators. Rhys does education about everything everywhere he goes.
Yeah,
So
good work. I've seen it. I've seen most of your guys' stuff at some point in time. So absolutely. And so Steve, what I could do if you want, again, I don't want to necessarily drive the conversation, but I could just show, I'll call it my problem. And
okay.
it really is so people can kind of understand where I'm coming from. Because when we talk about education, it can mean many, many different things. You're talking like courses for years, but I'm actually looking at a very specific problem. And maybe if I share my screen, you can really kind of
No, that's perfect.
what I'm talking about. Okay, so
That's
let me do
exactly
that.
what
Let
we
me
want to
share
do.
my screen here. If I can share my screen. Okay,
I think you should be able to share your screen.
I think so. It looks like it. Okay, desktop one.
Nice.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, can you see this, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just quickly give a bit of a background. As part of the decentralized education Intersect group, we were thinking about that it would make a lot of sense for a lot of educators and people all over the world to start submitting proposals that does basically a workshop and hackathon at kind of a conference in their communities. And obviously the problem statement here is around, increasing end user and developer adoption, right? That's where all we're trying to do that. And so this proposal is going to be around raising awareness of Cardano's benefits outside the ecosystem, because this is the biggest problem that I see, is that we do a lot of stuff with the Cardano events, but like, why are we not showing up at events outside? And there's so many events outside. So that's kind of what this proposal is about. It's in the ecosystem. But I just want to go down here. So really what the guts of the proposal is to basically do a hackathon. And that's going to be based off of the IOG's kind of template for hackathon. But what's really important to this group is here, right? These workshops for basically talking about Cardano, what is it, the business models, and then technical topics. So what I want to do is basically, these are the tracks. There would be like a business track, which would be, intro to Cardano and blockchain. And then I also have a partner on this that's in the marketing side, but also says, have some marketing business ideas as well. And then there's the technical track, right? So this is the smart contracts, tokens, integration libraries, transaction building. So what ideally I would like is, instead of me just going off and creating some for this workshop, as well as then everyone else keep doing that for all their other proposals, is can we not use Andamio, for example, to put into some modules that works within the context of a workshop. And a workshop, there might be an hour workshop for the business track, and then there might be, about 3 hours of the technical track. And that would just allow people to, it would kind of standardize our content that we're going to do in that kind of short period of time. It's a gateway for them because they can start to use that. And then obviously there can be then links to other things they want to do, obviously more in depth. And then obviously they can springboard into more content because obviously this is, it's an introductory kind of atmosphere. So I'll put it out there, but that's really where my motivation was. And and as you look through some of the proposals, you'll see a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I want to create this content. I'm going to create that content." And for this particular workshop, like we may as well only do it once. Just do it once. Have some modules that make sense, and then basically it can be replicated at different conferences and events, throughout the world. And it doesn't require a serious, the brain trust. Basically, some people have to understand what they're doing, but it would definitely provide a template for others. So I'll leave it there, but that's really kind of the ask, and that's really what I jumped into the conversation, and that's the conversation I also had with James about a week ago as part of the decentralized education working group.
Thank you for that. James, you want to jump in?
Yeah, there's a few different directions to go, but I guess to start, I agree so wholeheartedly with this need to not be starting from scratch, right? To be building upon what each other are doing. And so one of the things that happened more recently at Gimbalabs is one of our close collaborators, Hinson, who's really been on the governing team at Gimbalabs here. He's also full-time at SIDAN Lab, which is based in Hong Kong. And SIDAN delivered an in-person developer workshop for 12 new developers there. They've got workshop material for doing it. I should note that Hinson is his day job was in finance before jumping into Cardano. He's very quickly taught himself development. And he did go publicly on record saying that teaching is 5 times harder than smart contract development. So I just want everybody to know that. We're grateful to Hinson for sharing that with the world. But the work is underway. And it's integrated in one sense already. We are working together on delivering an Aiken project-based learning course, which was initially drafted for use at this in-person workshop. What a great opportunity that is, right? Because it's really hard to get feedback on online course materials. It's really, really nice to be able to look straight at students and to be sharing that space and to understand what concepts, what examples resonate and which ones don't. And so personally, I'm very excited about this model of drafting content, testing it in a live workshop setting, and then refining the asynchronous content that's going to be more widely available, right? This is not new. A lot of the successful Web 2 learning platforms build upon famous courses from universities, for example. So we've seen this. So yeah, I guess that's the high level. There's a few different things we can build on. And then a key interest of mine is what's the value of the insights? Okay, so Lawrence, you're going to pilot a model that ideally other people are going to adopt.
Sure. Yeah.
After you do, what do you think are some of the best ways we can iterate upon that together?
Well, I think I would assume would be similar to the way you do your modules today, right? We would create some modules for these workshops, and absolutely, you get feedback from the audience. Whoever's facilitating the workshop would get the feedback, and obviously that could be then fed back into the modules that people would use. And I would expect other people to start using these modules for their own workshops. And so whatever that feedback mechanism today that you use with Andamio, I'm not sure. It could just be on the Discord. Like, I don't know. It could be as simply informal as that. Obviously, you'll need a maintainer or maintainers of those modules. But I would just have it similar to and I'm just suggesting, have it similar to having a module for these workshops, just because they're very focused on, and they're very time bound. But I'm totally open for whatever you think makes sense. Like, it could be just part of a bigger course too, but I don't, that's what I'm kind of open to any suggestions.
Beautiful. Well, this is why I'm so glad this is a group conversation, because you and I can talk about this, and this conversation will continue. But we've got this in-person workshop bit. Let's also rewind to the book part, right? You have a published book that may benefit from some interactive online material. I was actually talking to Nadia last week about the very same thing. So Nadia and the team have written a book that's ready for market. And Nadia, you can share a little bit about your experience. You're currently looking at ways to support the book or to kind of supplement it, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat that Rhys's hand is up.
Sorry. I didn't see my screen.
Yeah, sorry, just before we move on, Pat, like to Nadia's book. If we have, like, I can only really speak to the technical track here because I can't really give you any advice on like marketing or legal stuff. But like, for example, like if we could easily just have one central place that we agree on together as go in line with Intersect and stuff like that, where we have a place we can contribute simple validators, stuff that we're all working on for our own separate projects and courses, and figure out the simplest, most concise version of like taking people through the steps to learn those kinds of things. And I know that's more of like more experienced educators like forte, not really mine necessarily. But with like smart contracts or like transaction building on here or the token standards, they kind of all go together. And but they are also their own separate things, right? And so there's a lot to teach in each of those points. And if we can find just one like GitHub repo that we can all dump a bunch of like very, very simple smart contracts with like the transactions that go with them. I find that when I've taught people stuff in person, demonstrating the validators and the smart contracts by themselves isn't enough because it's still like conceptual, right? So with the Aiken course that I'm doing, I'm only doing the transactions with tests. But with the test, you can still see the state of the transaction, but it doesn't teach people how to build those transactions. So that's only kind of half of the material that will be needed. But I think if we can figure out like novel ways or like simple ways of teaching like design patterns and stuff like that, because writing contracts isn't that difficult. It's more like learning how to build efficient validators and deal with different kinds of problems with the EUTXO model, right? That's the actual challenge with smart contracts. But if we can figure out a way, or like other people who are very familiar with, like Aiken's a good one because it's just so nice and easy to read and to learn compared to like Plutarch, for example. I think that would be a good way to go. And I think it would be very quick to be able to build a small library of really, really good educational material that, you know, I'm happy to contribute to. I'm sure everyone at Gimbalabs has loads of stuff that they could contribute towards that kind of stuff. And I can probably think of another handful of other people who would be able to contribute to those kinds of things as well, to help teach people what people who write smart contracts every day, like these kind of standards and ways of avoiding certain vulnerabilities and stuff are just kind of ingrained in our brain at this point. But teaching people those things is like so important because otherwise everything falls apart, right? And it's not what you want from your dad.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I guess the only thing is that I'm trying to focus on is that this is a very so it's the audience here for this workshop would be really around people that are very new to Cardano, very new to blockchain. So it's very time bound. So you don't have a lot of time. So it really is a most basics of introductory course. What you're talking about is totally bang on. That's really important. But obviously that's further down the road on that journey. And so we got to figure out, and again, maybe there could be obviously different types of workshops. There could be, you know, developer workshops, you know, that people have, you know, the Cardano developers come with it. There's different types of workshops. What I'm just focusing on this one is just really it's around for new people that are new to blockchain, new to Cardano, getting at conferences that we have no presence and we wonder why people don't know about us. So that's where I'm focusing in, but I agree there's lots of needs and what you said is totally valid. And that's why I wrote my book, exactly, it's 300 pages. It took me a long time, and it takes a long time because you're absolutely right. There are many, many important things to learn. But what I'm going to focus on this is really just how do I onboard people just so they can start playing around with it, and then it's a springboard to if they want to start going further, then absolutely they need to start learning a lot more stuff. That's
I completely agree with what you're saying, because you want to be able to teach people something in 10 minutes, right? And for them to actually be able to like push a button and try it themselves, right? Or something like that.
Exactly. Just whet the appetite. Okay, well, this is what it's like, and I agree. You learn by doing. So you're going to have to dumb things down a bit, and not to overload people. Really, I think some of the goals of this workshop, from my perspective, would be to get people, you know, minting a token, doing a transaction, you know, obviously having the wallet, understanding certain things, concepts, seeing it in action. And then all it is a stepping stone. And obviously, if they want to further this, then clearly they need a lot more than this workshop's going to do. But you've just now got more people involved, and that's I think one of our big problems right now. We
Yeah.
We don't have, people aren't aware of the benefits. They're not sure where to start. And you've got other layer ones doing this all the time. And that's why they're getting new users and they're getting new activations, etc. So it
Yeah,
really
and
is.
I wasn't meaning for like a collaborative kind of GitHub repo to be the point of a workshop, but it
Well,
would be somewhere that you can just point everyone afterwards where we can collaborate,
yeah,
like spending time doing good documentation. We can have videos and stuff that we've put together to explain the concepts in different kinds of media, right? Because that's as we were saying, as you were saying
Yeah.
before, also really, really important. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but
Nadia,
the
to
GitHub could work
interrupt.
too. Again, it's just how you segment this. Like, so there's this
Yeah.
first kind of the first onboarding part to just get people, and that's really all you're going to do in this workshop, and then you would build
Yeah.
it. But I don't know. So that's how we collaborate. I'm totally up. Whatever way works, GitHub is obviously totally fine.
So Nadia, I mean, like there's fuzzy things to this to me, you know. It's like, who are we talking to? And then this issue that Rhys brings up is like, you know, this more basic compilation of examples of how to do stuff. And I'm really curious what kind of, who you're approaching, or who you and your husband are having come to you in your workshops. What kind of people are they? Because you know, I don't know about y'all, but the people that I meet here in Cardano, I mean, people like Mix and James, and you know, Rhys is like, I mean, how many things do you do, Rhys? You know, like Henson. Henson didn't know anything about programming when he came here, and then all of a sudden he was like doing a high speed trading platform.
Right, and
I'm like,
serialization libraries.
I mean, like who on your street can do this? You know, like I don't know anybody like that. So, but anyway, that's kind of like, that's why I'm really curious what you're doing, Nadia, and I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so I just love being in these conversations so much. We just, Derek found, I'll just give you like a little backstory because that'll make the whole thing maybe come together a little bit. Derek um, found Bitcoin. Actually, he first saw a video about Bitcoin in 2012, and it was just over his head. He's not a tech guy at all. And then in 2017, we got involved. We owned a healing arts center, a couple healing arts center locations for a decade. That's what we did together. And he was involved in a mastermind in Los Angeles to figure out how to scale and take all of our credentialing content online. So it was with that mindset, like our background really was teaching long form programs. And because we were doing it in brick and mortar environments, we were really at capacity. And so we were trying to figure out how we're going to scale this and how we're going to really do it correctly. The first weekend of that mastermind happened to be about cryptocurrency, and because it was like really an industrious kind of entrepreneurial group of people. And he had seen it in 2012, and then he saw it again in 2017, and obviously like that changed how he was thinking about it. So when we came to Cardano in 2018, we started sort of through that bull market, through that bear market, just being you know, like cost averaging and being involved in that way. And we started to talk to everyone we knew about it because we were so excited about it. We saw the Africa special, like that whole process. And that was like the ethos that we took into it. And so we started educating and talking to people. And over that time, we've probably had far more conversations with people who are just regular people. And maybe you all do that also. I don't know if that's the majority of your conversations, but that's the way that we started to contribute, is just experientially. And so this book that we wrote in 2022 then became you know, you sit down with someone and, you know, I'll have to say that to this group so much, but you sit down with someone and, you know, they're interested in that you should own your own stuff, or they're interested in the investment opportunity, or they're a developer interested in changing how they do their work. Like, to find that part of the conversation for the average layperson, you're also like trying to explain what centralization is, and, well, what do you mean peer-to-peer? I have Venmo, and like all those conversations become sort of things you're tripping over. So the book is meant to be read by a total layperson. It's all stories. It's like, you know, we went on our honeymoon. We went to Belize. Belize is sort of in the towns that we were in, like pre-centralization. They're still living in sort of a decentralized way. What does that mean for a self-sovereign identity there versus in a you know, country like the US or like Europe, or like a, you know, Europe's not a country. So what does that mean for other places? And I say all this as backdrop to say we also, over this time, had created sort of educational courses that people could do via like a regular Web 2 LMS on our website with videos and worksheets that would come afterwards and next steps, sort of life practices. But it felt weird to me to publish this book in a Web 2 space or in like an Amazon or like that kind of a thing, because for me, what's in my heart is always like, I want to demonstrate and create models that other people can use. And what is that we can, how can we do that? So it just sort of sat there for 2 years. And then we went to Rare Evo and we ran to the book.io team, the stuff.io team. And I said to them, we have this book. We have this channel, YouTube channel, we have this book. What would it be like to like go through the process of demonstrating a mint of this book into, and I don't know how familiar everyone is with book, but they're ask questions if you're not, I can fill that stuff in. But we'll go through it as far as like, here's what this means overall. Here's the context for what this will do for digital versus digital publishing license model in Web 2 versus own your stuff in Web 3. Here's what this looks like to produce it. And then I understood in that conversation that it's not just a book, like they just minted the Charles token, which is the interview with Charles, where they minted a fungible media token over a 2-day period of time. And each of those individual tokens was a cent, but when you have that token in your wallet, you can watch this video. So they created like a media element. And then that just sort of brought those two worlds together of, okay, we have this book, you could do a fungible book and people could just read it and out of their wallet through the stuff reader. Or now you can embed all this stuff in there. So that opens all kinds of things. Like Lawrence, for your book, I could see like you have the book, and then at the end of every chapter, you have a video of you demonstrating something where you're actually doing it and they can see it there. And that's embedded within your book. Maybe you do the audio piece, right? You can build all these different elements, media elements into this book. And then from there, what I ended up talking then to James about was, what does it look like then if they can have all that and take it in, but what does it look like if they want to evaluate themselves, like do some kind of a self-assessment? And you have like an Andamio or Ollie or like work.courses, that kind of platform where that person can then go and actually do some kind of evaluation process, become part of a community and get credentials for that later on. And so that sparked a big conversation between me and James. So I'll just maybe pause there because I would love to just go off for the next 20 minutes about the implications of this and how cool it is. But isn't it neat? Wouldn't it be neat to think about? My mind went, this is a real world use case for influencers who have millions of people in their online courses to like have a model by which they can migrate to Web3 plus that audience, which is happening with book.io right now with authors who are like New York bestselling authors, are making special gated members only content for people who hold these book DEAs in their wallet. And so now before she knows it, the 60-year-old woman who's been reading your novel for 20 years has a wallet and is like hanging out in that space. And you could use that model for really complex things, or in our case, like maybe our first, oh, and last thing, and then I'll stop because I'll stop. The last thing is they can do mint and print also. So in our case, we do a lot one-on-one with people. We'll just give them a book and be like, read the book. And on the first page is a QR code. And here's how you get a wallet. And here's an explanation of that. And once you get a wallet, send us the address and we'll send you a fungible token, right? And then you can read the book online so just hearing about it, thinking about it, I bet all of your minds have like created a bunch of things you can use. But I love the idea of, you could also then have gated workshops, right? You could have the book itself and then come into these workshop environments and do that in all different ways, public and incentive based, and there's a lot that you could do with it. So for us, it's very much a layperson, but for everyone here, it's going to be all different kinds of audiences, but the model could work the same.
I do want to jump in, just say, hey, this is the halfway point, and just to reset the room, we do have a recording going. Hey, if you've just joined in and you heard Nadia talking about some incredible mind-bending stuff, we're all educators. We are focused on this type of thing. And this is the Gimbalabs Playground. We're going to go for another 45 minutes. If you have any feedback, please let me know. I'm monitoring the chat. And you can join our Discord. You can see us on YouTube, where you may be seeing this. And thank you much for your attendance. And Steve, take it away, man.
Thank you, man. I just want to connect with Travis here because I've got the work.courses page pulled up right now, and it's not, like if you could speak to it, Travis, because like there's a lot of Cardano specific stuff, but there are other things involved there. I mean, like there's an Aiken course, but there's like learning German, and I forget what I saw just a minute ago that was kind of like, whoa, I want to do that. But it's a huge array of things.
And that kind of
can you
speaks.
talk about how that came to be, and how much, I mean, are you recruiting people to bring in courses, or are they coming on their own? Because I'm wondering, like with all the educators that are here in this meeting right now, it's an interesting model that you have. So
Yeah.
please tell us about it.
So work.courses, if you guys are familiar, it started off as kind of like a grassroots NFT driven project, that we were community funded through a NFT sale. And then during that process, I wasn't part of the founding team, but as they were creating the art and the theme of the art, they came up with the idea of a kind of like a blockchain-based learning platform that enables creators to monetize their content and not be bound to the restrictions of Web 2. And initially, the idea was, there's a lot of developers and things of that nature in Web 3 that we can help accelerate the learning process, because a lot of people, just like Sean, the founder of our project, he's new, and it's hard to find a central point of resources. In Web 2, you can go to YouTube, you can go to Udemy, things of that nature, but there's not like a central hub for Web 3 learning. So that was our goal. But then when we launched, we realized our community wasn't necessarily, expert Cardano developers. It's kind of rare to, have a lot of that knowledge. I'm not a developer myself, but I am knowledgeable on, other subjects. So with the decentralized nature of Web3, we weren't going to get in anybody's way of monetizing content that they wanted to share. So it kind of opened up the possibilities. And if you scroll through, you'll see people sharing baking recipes and maybe gaming strategies. And then as far as the recruiting thing goes, I've spent several, I've been in Cardano for quite a long time, and Twitter is kind of like my hanging grounds. I'm not a developer, so there's not like it's hard to reach everybody in Cardano. There's a lot of flavors. So I think through the NFT projects, we're touching base with a lot of degens, but it's tough to get all of the educators on board. I don't think Twitter might be the hanging grounds for the educators. So the onboarding process has been an uphill battle, I would say.
Yeah. No, after a day of Twitter, I often feel like I'm not sure this is where the cool kids actually hang out. This is just where everybody hangs out. Particularly when it comes to really understanding Cardano deeply. Like There's sometimes there are
Yeah,
days
yeah.
when
And it's fun to degen, but I don't
yeah,
know if the degens are um honest with their ambition to learn sometimes.
right, right, right. You know,
That's a
and I
really, I
think that's
love that
what's
choice of words. That was a really nice turn of phrase.
yeah. And I don't want to distract the conversation, but some of that influencer type of mentality, or the people who engage on that level, their conversations about governance are kind of disturbing, um, because they just kind of hit the shallow part on it, and it's tough.
And just to touch on our content, in the early stages, my vision for this platform and how it could be utilized, and it hasn't taken off in this way so far, but I was starting to think about incentivized learning. When you're a project launching, it's a lot of these protocols, DeFi protocols, they can be quite complicated. For example, I think Butane is launching a synthetics protocol, and I am not a traditional investor, and I'm not familiar with a lot of these tools. I'm kind of learning as we go how to like leverage trade and borrow and lend, and I'm no, I understand the purpose in the traditional world, borrowing for a loan, but in terms of investing, how to use these tools, I think it makes sense, if you want to onboard retail, to educate your audience. And that's where I saw, we could fill that niche, if, this might be a poor example, but if Claymates had a really cool experience that was kind of complicated, they might not have the um the the platform to upload content and share content and to incentivize content. And work.courses is built in a way that someone can create a pool of rewards and create an incentive to complete this course, learn this content, and then kind of speed up that process of getting people to absorb what you're trying to create or deliver to this space. And I recognize that is a lot of this stuff is technical, and it's kind of, and it all goes back to kind of like the Coinbase learning modules. When you're on the Coinbase app, they'll say earn $1 of this token just to read a summary and tell us what you read. So I think I felt that could push Cardano forward and get people to engage with these projects. And because the nature of Cardano is kind of stale, you see a lot of ADA parked on the sidelines and people not necessarily engaging in the environment. And part of that is the unfamiliarity aspect. I remember several years ago when I first got involved in Cardano, it was intimidating just to stake and delegate to a staking pool. So I think, if we can get our community to, and it's not easy creating courses and educating, that was a really good quote at the very beginning. I think it was a quote by Henson that educating is 5 times as hard as programming. That's the real deal. When I went to create the content and for some of the things I wanted to teach, all of a sudden I gained a lot of respect for educators, because how do you tackle that approach? So
Well, I'm with you. Like when I just want to say, like I mean, for a year and a half or two, I started talking about this gap, right? Because I was attracted to the whiteboard and the idea to go to Africa and these other Southern Hemisphere countries first, with Cardano, and that's where we should grow and all that. And that's why I stuck my head in Catalyst, at least because I saw that as a way for that kind of shit to get financed, which led me to education, because that's, it's like in the rest of the world, that's this infrastructure for your future is is education. And, you know, and after a while it started to bother me that, you know, like you know, I live in Alabama, you know, and to me it's very similar to Africa, you know, when it comes to blockchain. You know, like you know, if I go out and say blockchain to, you know, 80% of the people out here at least, you know, they don't know what I'm talking about. And so like, and we, you know, there's all this emphasis on education, and yet, you know, like there's a big gap between somebody out on the street like that and, you know, Gimbalabs Plutus project-based learning 100 module, right? There's a lot of shit you got to know about just to get to there. And I didn't know who or how to really approach them. And that's what I like about the work.courses. You know, you've got some of those intro conversations, and to your point about investing, you know, I saw that there was a course about how to do something on Optum, which is great. You know, like I've traded, but some of the stuff that they're offering now with derivatives and liquidity pools, I don't understand. And
Yeah, and I think you know that's kind of like the point I was touching on is, you know, Web3 is very intimidating, and retail audience, you know, don't be too tough on, you know, Alabama. I'm in California, and you know, I would say the same thing, you know, and I think a lot of
right,
it is due to the regulatory uncertainty in the United States, and it kind of puts a cloud over the, you know, innovation and whatnot. And you know, you know, you hear it on the media, oh, crypto's a scam, and
right,
it's hard for the average you know, retail consumer out here to take it serious. And it's not easy. You know, I didn't have anyone to teach me the fundamentals of blockchain investing and, you know, all the different layers that come with this space. But you know, I kind of have that addictive personality, and you know, I push through. And I think if um you know, I always conversate with people in the real world because I kind of want to see where other people are at with crypto. And one of the questions I always ask is, how many transactions do you have on chain, whether you're using Ethereum, Solana, or whatnot? And I
yeah,
in California, as far as like people that aren't like crypto enthusiasts, I have not found many people that even use blockchains for their intended purpose. You know, they're here for the money. They want to make quick gains,
mm-hmm.
and if we want, you know, people to embrace this technology, I think we need to make education sexy again. And I think that's
Right.
what work.courses is trying to do. I mean, it's very difficult to do like a learn to earn model, but if you can make it fun and engaging and, you
But
know,
you know,
wild.
I just on that note, you know, I just want to know that I just want you to know that I do not understand math because I had beautiful math teachers, and making education sexy was a real harm to my or to my greater STEM education. Is a real problem. Nadia, I saw your note that you have to go. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I want to be looking at your work here this week today soon.
Nice, cool. And I'll be excited to be back. I'm on Discord still if you guys would love to talk about
Okay,
these things
cool.
more. And I know I just kind of dumped out a lot there in terms of all those things happening, but it's more sort of in the going broad and then sort of distilling it kind of mindset. So I really love being in this kind of conversation, and I'm really happy you guys put this together. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Nadia.
82, right?
Unreal.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's cool.
Beautiful.
Have fun.
James, what do you got on your mind?
Well, I wanted to pick up from Nadia's point just about like demonstrating models that other people can use. That's really important to me as well. And whether we're talking about the models we use for publishing content or the models we use for building in-person workshops that people can create, like so much of what we are doing here is in proving and then improving upon models, right? And that's really what we have the chance to do here together. It's complicated at first because everything is overlapping. So just again, to draw on an example that Nadia shared, think about the example of the QR code in the beginning of a textbook. And this QR code in some way or another is a portal to Web3. It gives me access to something, right? Now, at the surface level, that's a nice thing to have, right? You're using the utility of the blockchain to make possible something that wasn't possible before. But I think there's two other layers to really look at that through. One speaks to a lot of the audience that Travis is talking about, those people who might not be developers directly, but they are Web3 savvy, and maybe they just haven't yet been exposed to the pattern or to the model that's going to help them have that breakthrough, right? Like, what's possible? It's, oh gosh, I never thought about what would happen if I embedded a QR code in a textbook so that people could get access to this, right? And once I have that idea, a lot of the best ideas do come from non-developers, right? Devs are too busy with the nitty-gritty of making sure that things work. And we need to expose these tools and these patterns to broad audiences so they can look at it and say, damn, if I can do this, does that mean I can do that? And now there's a conversation going. But at the very same time, that QR code looks very different to the developer, who's not just going to be satisfied that it works. They want to know how. It's not just about, oh, this is possible, but oh, here's the stack this is built upon, and here's how I can integrate it. And ideally, we get those two different groups talking to each other, right? Those who are inspired by what is now possible, and those who understand how it's built so they can keep going with it. And this kind of raises the challenge of any educational venue, whether it's a book, an online course, or an in-person workshop, is until you know where somebody's coming in, it's really hard to know where to start. And that's, Steve referenced that module 100 of PPBL. It's so hard to write that module because we have to make a lot of assumptions about what people are coming in with. And we always have to, like, all right, Lawrence, I mean, when you started writing the book, how many times did you find yourself just backtracking infinitely until eventually you just succumb, you're exhausted? Okay, I went back as far as I can go, right? If they don't know how to turn on their computer, I can't write about that in the book, right? But you have to consider it. And so from the even workshop perspective, audience perspective, building models, and what's interesting to me is, like, even this workshop, Lawrence, I'm not yet confident that it's possible to write just one, right? If I go to a blockchain conference and host a 3-hour workshop the day before, right? Am I going to have a room full of Twitter degens? Am I going to have a room full of people who are ETH savvy but never exposed to UTXO model? Or am I going to have a room full of people who are in for, like, the vision of blockchain but have zero experience with the tech? That workshop's going to be very different for each of those groups.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just going to jump in here because what I'm trying to do with this, obviously, this workshop idea is to go where people, the new users, are. And
choose those workshops.
With these workshops is go to these conferences where you're trying to get these users that are not familiar. So I agree. I'm tailoring, in my mindset is really around people that are new to this space. And I agree. So and that's a very targeted workshop. Absolutely. That is a different workshop than being at be ETH Denver or something like that. Like, that would be a different thing because that would be you're trying to convert maybe people. So you're absolutely right. This is not a one size fit all. But obviously, some of the concepts are going to be similar. But I see there's such value in talking to people, getting outside of the bubble, the Cardano bubble. Like, I just have anecdotal. There's events that I run in Toronto, right? So with Noom, there's a guy that's on the Noom team. He's in Toronto, and so we just do these future music events, and we have musicians come to these events. They know nothing about blockchain, And it is the most amazing conversations when their minds go, holy shit, you can do that? You mean I could get around this scumbag promoter that keeps ripping me off? Yeah, you've got Bill. Like it's those are the things that I think, wow, this is if we can get those messages out on how to use the blockchain, that's where you'll really get the adoption. And you're only going to do that if you go out where those people are. So whether it's tech conferences, not necessarily blockchain, Comic-Con, like, you know, if you want to get degens, get people that like comics and stuff. I'm just saying there's going to be certain groups that are going to be interested and going to realize, oh, I could do that, or you could do these trading card things on blockchain, or go to some medical conferences, or go to like it goes on and on and on. And so I think that's really where I'm thinking these at least the workshop I'm thinking is really on onboarding those people in those different areas that don't even really know about blockchain, but can start connecting the dots, going, oh, actually, this could be really helpful in my line. Oh, that's actually neat. That's where I think, again, there's many values change, but that's one that I think is a low-hanging fruit, and it doesn't take a lot. And we've got people all over the world, and there are conferences that happen for all over topics. And what person in Cardano wouldn't want to go down there and talk about Cardano and how this could help you, right? You don't have to be a super guru, but it would be nice to have some educational material that you could leverage off of, right?
It's a great point, you know, and it's so true about so many businesses. You know, like I became fascinated with boot making, and that got me to be fascinated with leather, and then that got me to be fascinated locally, because where I lived, you know, there's probably 100 cows on my road sometimes, some years, you know, just the different neighbors who have 20 or 30 head. And I'm like, what happens to these hides? Well, I just bought some beef from somebody who was willing to split a cow with me. And I go to the butcher to pick it up, and I talked to him, and I asked him about the hides, and he was like, oh man, you know, like we just do like 300 or 400 a year at the most. And I was like, well, that's cool. I was like, somebody buy them from you? And he's like, well, there's a company that would send out a driver if we had 1,000 hides at a time, but they won't even come for 200 or 300. And I was like, so what do you do with them? And he's like, you know, we freeze them until the freezer fills up, and then we take them to the dump. And I was just like, okay, wait, you know, like I had just read about these ranchers in Montana that it's like 4 ranches, big ones, and they have totally vertically integrated their supply chain, right? They raise the beef, they slaughter the beef, they sell the beef, and they have their own restaurants. And I'm like, and what do you do with all the hides? You know, like, you know, how vertically integrated can we be with a cow? You know, and I would think that you could be really vertically integrated, right? You know, there's only 3 leather makers in the United States right now, which is crazy to me. You know, it just boggles my mind. And to me, you know, like, how do you take an already existing business, small business even, and just, you know, plug it into the blockchain? And I wonder, you know, like, would it be easier to just start one, you know, and plug it into the blockchain, or how hard would it be to integrate that into somebody who's already fairly vertically integrated like that? And I think that, you know, like I can see the process, and, you know, like Mixaxum, he was the first person who really presented something that I thought was practically a full complement for an existing organization of a software suite. And, you know, he clearly thought about, as he built that, he was thinking about it modularly. And I think that that's getting to that point, you know, like, to me, that would be the larger idea behind these workshops, is how do we create modules that are software modules that are modular, you know, like you can plug and play them, much like the concept behind Marlowe, which doesn't seem to work. And I'm curious about that, you know, because all of these things have to do with adoption and actually selling it, you know, actually people like me going out and say, hey, let me talk to you about your business and let me show you some shit, you know, and really, really get across the point to improving everybody's lives. And I'm very impatient about that process, even though I'm not that ambitious with all of this stuff. But you know, I'm just like, this is what everybody else should be doing, you know, kind of attitude. So what do you got to say, Rhys?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, guys. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. So, like, well, from what you're saying and what Lawrence was saying before, I think a good way, if you're thinking about going outside of like blockchain, I think the best way to introduce them is knowing where you're going. There's like a handful of very common, conceptually common use cases for like blockchain as infrastructure for things outside of crypto, like normal businesses and stuff. And so I think having like a handful of examples that are modular in the way that they're presented, like supply chain tracking or verified ownership of something, or using it as some kind of gate, like very literally verifiable ownership. Things like this are great concepts that you can demonstrate. So like Lawrence was saying with the music events that he's doing in Toronto, when you explain to an artist that you can give someone ownership, like full ownership of something, and they can use it through blockchain, no one else can use it, right? And you can update that to give people new things, or you can use it as its own version of a ticket for like event access or something like that. These concepts suddenly become like palpable. The person in that industry can understand how it uses, and that's what really makes things click for a lot of people, I think. And so if you go into like a cattle ranch, you have things that you can bring, like concepts of potential tooling or infrastructure, like rails that you can pitch to people or use as kind of to demonstrate the concepts of the real use cases of blockchain beyond like trading tokens for just at the sake of having some tokens, or like a race to the bottom, like someone's going to lose out if you buy this meme token. Like, just pray that it's not you, like, because that's not something that industries will actually take seriously. But if you can say we have like verifiable ownership, we've got supply chain tracking, we've got this, we got that, like we got these kind of concepts are very easy to kind of inject into anything. It could be phishing, it could be like a tech, right? It could be just another tech thing like IMX or like distributed computation or something like that. Like these concepts aren't new, and blockchain is like a really good way to kind of bring new solutions to the table that everyone could be using. It's just finding the right way to present it in a very short workshop where you can actually just teach high level concepts and give people that point, like Lawrence was saying, just have that kind of idea just click in someone else's brain, because that's, from my experience, the best way of teaching someone, right, is having them reach the conclusion themselves and go, oh shit, now I get it, right? So I think finding those things, it isn't going to be too difficult, and you can use them across every industry that you go to. You're like, yeah, we got these 5 tools. Okay, we're going to, I'm just going to roll with fishing because I've said it out loud now. We're going to this fishing conference. I've never done fishing in my life, by the way, guys. I have no idea about it, but we're going to this fishing contest. Cool. Well, here are these 3 things that could apply to different parts of this industry. We'll go with those workshops in mind. And then if we talk to people on an individual level, we can just use one of those as a concept. Or if we're actually presenting a workshop, we can say, what does the crowd seem to be like when you get there, and go, right, okay, I think this one is the best example to explain these concepts, to introduce them.